impression of you opening the podcast?
Sure.
Welcome to the Theory of Nothing podcast.
I want to keep that in there. That's good.
Oh, okay.
Welcome
I can't.
to the Theory of Nothing podcast. I'm your co-host, Brian Wiora.
I'm your co-host, Chris Keene.
So today, I think what we wanted to talk about is the Theory of Americana.
Yes.
And I think a good place to start is this term Americana is so fascinating. Have you heard it before?
Yes, I've heard it before.
Yeah.
I don't hear it used much anymore.
Right.
Probably because it's, racist and white supremacist and look at how uncomfortable he's getting. Look at his face, guys. Look at
All it takes is to bring Chris Keene to North Hollywood, to Burbank, and he starts getting,
Well, let's be honest. Don't you think that that's part of why you don't hear of that much anymore? Because it's popular, right, to hate America and hate what things we've done in the past and all that. And don't get me wrong, I hate our government. A lot of my jokes are at our government, but I love America, like the idea of America and the people of America. So I get criticizing the government, but anyway, but you know what I mean? Like it's not cool to be like patriotic anymore, and it's not cool. And people are big on criticizing the past and stuff.
It would be funny to be the opposite way. Like, I really hate life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, but I love our government.
There you go. He's writing bits on the podcast now.
I love I hate the ideals, but I love the execution.
Don't you think that has affected some nostalgia?
Absolutely. And I want to get
because there's so much criticizing the past, like oh, look at how problematic that was. Look at how gross we were. So I think that has affected some of this.
Were they ever really the Wonder Years?
I think they remade the Wonder Years, but I never saw it. But it was like, I think it's with like an all black cast. Yeah. So that's like a funny example of what we're talking about. Like,
that's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So there is a lot of that. Sure. And I know you don't want to get political, but I feel like it's kind of impossible to not get somewhat political because it has affected our culture so much.
Well, who said I didn't want to get political?
You did, with your facial expression.
No, I just don't want. I just didn't necessarily want to engage in ranting about the problems with sort of legacy media's.
No, that's not what I mean.
Okay.
I just think that it has affected how we look at our past.
Yeah.
And this what we're talking about here is about our past culture, right?
Sure.
Like you were just saying.
Well, here's what I'll say about this. So I think one thing about America is it's an incredibly changing, adaptable country, almost philosophically. So to me, Americana, by the way, because we didn't really define the term, Americana is, artifacts and cultural objects and history related to America, and specifically North America, specifically the United States of America. There might be a theory of Americana as it relates to Central America or South America. I don't really know much about that.
Now he's getting woke, guys. Look at this.
Well, I just don't know about it.
Okay.
I'm not woke.
You don't know about it? Why don't you care, Brian?
I don't know about it. It doesn't mean I don't believe these people exist in Brazil.
Shouldn't you care more about their history?
I don't know. Tell me about Brazilian. Tell me one thing you know about the history of Chile.
Their women have big asses.
Okay,
just huge.
That's why we do this. That's what we need there. I think that like the foundation of this country, right, is a nation of immigrants, a nation of people starting over, a nation of people. It's actually a little bit related to what we were saying in the theory of Los Angeles, where we called it a city of people trying to create themselves, right?
Yeah. Yes.
That's kind of the idea of America too.
That's true.
But as a result, when we talk about Americana and American culture, it's kind of interesting because it's got such a more limited history than a lot of countries, especially a lot of European countries.
Yeah.
And it feels very adaptive and very reactionary to what is happening in the rest of the world.
Yeah, I can see that.
So I've got like a list of questions here about like what is the theory of Americana? What does it mean? But before I get to any of those, I mean, any thoughts about like just the term itself?
Americana. I mean, I feel like it, like as far as what it means,
Sure.
you mean? Or I don't know. To me, it means like our culture.
Yeah.
So that could include a million different things.
Right.
But obviously, all of our art and that, I don't know. Yeah, just movies, music, film, painting, all of that. But it's more than that, though, right? It's also, I don't know. It could be anything. Fashion. It could be just all aspects of our culture. It could even be like how we live our lives, right? Like how our homes are set up, how our families live.
I'm glad you bring up fashion for a second. Because
remember we were going to bring Nick on and be like, we're doing the theory of fashion.
That's right. The theory of fashion with Nick Dervosla will be our next episode. It'll be amazing. He's going to wear that same orange jacket he wears everywhere. So to me, I want to talk about politics actually for a second.
Oh,
now
shit.
You've accused me of being some apolitical moron. I love U.S. history and I love politics. One of the first things I have like a semi-photographic memory. I don't think it's fully photographic, but I remember a lot of things. One of the first things I ever memorized when I was like 5 years old was every president in order. And that's when my parents were like, "Oh, we raised a weird kid, like that's what happened here. Like most kids are playing baseball. I'm like, our 18th president was, Ulysses S. Grant.
That's great.
Oh, God, he's gonna become a podcaster. That's what my parents said.
Yeah.
Art is always political. Culture is always political. Okay. That's inevitable. Just if you live in a society, for you to make apolitical anything, you'd have to live in like the woods, like the Australians do, But the history of politics is a history of fashion. And what I mean by that is that certain political movements become fashionable and then become unfashionable. And not just political movements in the time of their movement, but upon reflection of their movement. Let me give you a great example of this in United States history is Woodrow Wilson. So Woodrow Wilson was a president he was our 28th president after Taft. He was the first Democrat president in there were 5 or 6 Republican presidents in a row, and then it was Woodrow Wilson. And Woodrow Wilson was the founder of the UN. And like when I was in school, we studied Woodrow Wilson as this very good president. There were a lot of high schools named after Woodrow Wilson. Woodrow Wilson was considered this very important, influential figure. He was considered by political scientists 50 years ago as one of the best presidents ever. Now, people don't like Woodrow Wilson anymore. People don't like it because he had a long history of racism. He debuted Birth of a Nation at the White House. He had a very strong ties with the KKK. He's become very unfashionable.
Well, this is everything I was talking about at the beginning of the show.
Right. But the idea that we would look at Americana and try to judge it politically is silly because our interpretation of politics currently will eventually become unfashionable as well.
Of course. That's why, well, there's so many things, but that's why so much of this stuff of calling out the past is funny because you have to judge the past in the time that it existed in.
Right. But also maybe judge is the wrong way to think about it. Why are we judging anything? Why not just observe it and try to understand it and recognize it?
Well, no one's doing that, Brian. I mean, have you seen social media?
I don't mind judging things when they're when they exist in more
I think that's
metrics.
the culture we live in, right? It's just a judgmental, shitty cult. That's all people do. Every comment online is a judgment, right?
This is interesting. Do you know who the highest paid reality TV star of all time is?
No.
Judge Judy.
Okay. That's
Take
interesting.
That to the thought bank. Put that on your thinking caps at night. Okay. So that's my take on politics is, of course it's political, but the idea of what being political means is going to depend on whenever you listen. Look, inevitably,
of course, what is cool? I mean that's why all this stuff is so stupid about, to me at least, about all this calling out of the past.
Sure.
Because you're not, a lot of the time it's not put in the context of the time it existed in.
Right. And in 300 years, when they are teaching in schools this podcast, when schools are like, this was what American culture was in 2025, was the Theory of Nothing podcast with Chris Keene and Brian Wiora.
Yeah.
They will look at this conversation and be like, well, it's marred by sort of cultural tropes of the time or whatever. But the things I want to talk about today and about Americana are the things that I think will be culturally relevant in 300 years.
Oh, that's interesting.
Years.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Because the great thing about doing the episode we did on the Beatles is I'm more confident that the Beatles will be relevant in 500 years than I am in, like, for instance, even the idea of America existing in 500 years.
Really?
I think it's more likely that America as a country does not exist in 500 years than it is that the Beatles are not a relevant cultural artifact.
I don't know if they'll be a relevant cultural artifact, but people will probably still know who they are. Yeah.
Yeah.
And America probably won't exist.
But it's more okay. But I'll put it like this: like, it's more likely I think people know who the Beatles are than Woodrow Wilson in 500 years.
Yes.
You know.
Definitely.
So with that, you know, I want to start off today by talking about, like, you know, when it comes to Americana and when it comes to American culture, like, what my theory about how I think it operates, and then I want you to respond to what I'm about to lay out here.
Okay.
Fair enough?
Yeah.
So what I think is that American culture kind of started as a very reactionary culture to what was happening in England at the time. Like, I think England is our most prominent sort of cultural paradigm, if you will. And I think that when you talk about Americanizing English culture, you get some pretty interesting differences. So, like, I'll start with the horror genre. You watch a lot of horror films.
Yeah.
You actually probably watch more horror films than I do.
Yeah, I love horror.
Yeah. So it's interesting because I think I've got a more limited view on the horror genre, and I probably have a better understanding of horror literature than horror cinema. But what's interesting to me about the horror genre in England is that it all takes place in cities. You know, like Jekyll Hyde, for example, that takes place in a city. You know, a lot of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's Sherlock Holmes stories take place in a city. A lot of American horror takes place out in the country. You know, it's always on these farms, and it's always in the middle of the woods, you know, it's in some abandoned house somewhere. And I think that's very reflective of those societies, right? A lot of what was happening in England, especially at the time of, like, the Industrial Revolution, was everything was becoming industrialized, obviously. Factories, big apartment buildings, things like that, which we're seeing in America a little bit more now than we were 150 years ago. But America has always been about the pastoral, right? Manifest destiny, right? The great unknown. And I think that's why, like, art became adaptive to that mindset, specifically horror art.
That's why you feel like but what does that have to do with where the stories take place?
Well, just because America exists in the countryside.
Okay. I see what you're saying.
And I guess because my understanding of horror films is that they are reflections of ourselves. Like, we're scared of ourselves.
Oh, interesting.
And that's the idea of horror. The horror genre is like a looking inwards as opposed to a looking outwards. Like, we always feel like the scary monster is this thing, like whether it's the clown from It, or whether it's, you know, Jack the Ripper, or whether it's the Michael Myers from Halloween, or Scarecrow or whatever. But it's always
it depends on that is true. A lot of horror movies are like social commentary and like commentary on human nature. It depends on the movie, right? Like Night of the Living Dead is a commentary on, like, racism and fear of, like, integration and stuff. Have you seen Night of the Living Dead? Okay. Or like Dawn of the Dead. Like, these are all Yeah, that's like more like a commentary on like consumerism and stuff in the late 70s.
Yeah.
But Smile is a recent horror movie I like a lot, and it's kind of about like trauma and what that does to a person. I love it so much. You should watch it.
Yeah.
They all have different things, but you're right. It's usually commentary on like the human condition or our society or something like that. That's why I hate when people disparage horror like it's this dumb shock value genre. It's not, you know.
Yeah.
There's a lot of great horror movies have like underlying messages that are really important.
Sure.
Or if they don't have that, a lot of them are just super creative and interesting movies. But
yeah, I think this also this idea of this being adaptive and reactive also applies to music. So we talked a lot about the Beatles, the American version of the Beatles being the Beach Boys, right? And the distinction between those two bands. I think the Beatles were seen as very rebellious, right? They were seen as like a lot of their music is about sort of running and chasing and all of that stuff, primarily after girls, right? That kind of stuff. I like a song like "I Want to Hold Your Hand" or "From Me to You," or "There's a Place," right? You talked about "There's a Place" on the last podcast.
Yeah,
it's all the Beach Boys. To me, their music is like very domestic in this way and like very safe. I mean, even just the persona of the band was very, apple pies and French fries,
That's true. Yes.
And they're very clean cut. And it's always like, there's this girl back home, right? Mm-hmm. Or they were very California, so
you feel like that's representative of like Americana, like the classic version. But obviously, there's rebellious American bands, right?
Well, that progressed over time for sure.
Yeah.
And I want to get into the Replacements in a bit.
Oh,
I've got to think on that. But,
all right.
I feel like American cinema.
And if anyone's going to be rebellious, I feel like it would be us,
That's
not
true.
England. But
well, yeah, but the American ideals and the American culture is very anti that.
Anti-rebellion?
Yeah.
Really?
Conceptually. Maybe you disagree.
I disagree.
Okay. This is the best
Our whole
part
country's founded on rebellion.
The best part of this podcast, by the way, for those of you who are first-time listeners, is when Chris Keene and I disagree.
Yeah, I totally disagree. Our country's founded on rebellion, and our country is all about being independent, right? Make your own destiny, make yourself. It's about being an individual. It's not about conforming. It's not about it. The whole basis of America is about rebellion and individuality. That's why I hate so much. There's so people like I'm gonna get political again, but it's almost like those things are thought of as like right wing now. Mm-hmm. Like if someone's like wants to be like an individual or a free thinker, like free thinker is now like a bad word. Do you know what I mean?
Sure.
Like, or conspiracy theorist is I get the connotations behind conspiracy theories, but to villainize like free thinker to me is hilarious. Yeah. Like that should be a good thing.
Well, again, I'm not super concerned with what the current status quo of these terms are.
Yeah,
necessarily.
But I think that's the most American thing, though,
yeah.
is to be a free thinker, to be an individual. That's what it's about. It's not about the collective. It's about the individual in America.
Yeah, that's actually I do agree with that. I think the idea of rebellion, though, is kind of interesting because, like, to me, the way that I was taught about like the American Revolution was not necessarily that it was rebellious, but that it was out of a sense of justice. Or that it was a sense of like morality. Mm-hmm. Same with the Civil War, right? The South, when I was studying the Civil War, like the South was the rebels, right?
That's true, yeah.
The South was rebellious. The North, who are the good guys, that might be a hot take, but the Union.
Well, this is what I mean. We had the independent free thinkers in the South, you know? They were fighting the good fight, they're just trying to own their people. They're just trying to just let them own some people.
It's states' rights, you know? I like that. Actually, that is one thing that I think that woke Twitter has gotten right.
Yeah.
Because there's the tweets that go around like, states' right to what? States' rights to do what? And I'm like, okay, that's a fair point. That's a fair point.
I like that.
I think that like rebellion is kind of a tricky word when it relates to America, because I think that America and Americana, and again, I'm not separating the politics of this, but I'm saying the politics are irrelevant to what we're trying to do here, because is it really rebellion if you feel like you're in the right? You know, is Batman a rebel?
Yeah, I think Batman's a rebel,
okay,
because he's rebelling against the norms of society.
Yeah,
like the norm of society is we're not supposed to have vigilantes. Like that's bad. That's wrong. That's bad. But he's like, no, fuck this. This city's fucked up. No one's doing anything about it. I'm taking this into my own hands.
Okay, so this actually gets. I didn't think we'd go here, but let's. So let's talk about like when we talk about like the most. Because I was trying to think like what is the most American movie of all time. That's a.
Oh wow.
That's
okay.
I want to do most American song or music, most American movie, and most American book.
Oh, this is going to be very hard.
I might have brought it with me here, but
this is going to be very hard.
But let's start with movie for a second here, because you open up a very like this is a good place to start. Like, what is the most American movie of all time?
I know what mine answer is.
Well, let's start with Rebel Without a Cause.
That's a good
for an
movie,
example.
yeah.
Because there's probably not
we're wearing the leather.
Classic Americana actor than James Dean. And of Dean's movies, there's no more American movie of his than Rebel Without a Cause.
This is fun. I have a new bit where I talk about James Dean, so this is
You also have a Rebel Without a Cause bit.
Do I?
From like 2 years ago.
You got to remind me of that later, because I can't remember.
Okay.
But
wait,
I think
I might have Mandela effect you. I think that might be someone else that has that.
Whatever. Anyway, go on.
I apologize.
So
to whatever open micer has that bit.
I don't think it's
Please
me.
comment.
I don't think it's
okay.
me.
Well, The Rebel Without a Cause is interesting because have you seen that movie?
Of course, yeah.
Okay. Well, because the plot of that movie is very interesting, where James Dean, he's like not really a rebel. He's like the good guy. You know, he's like the most wholesome character in that whole movie. Everyone else around him is kind of the rebel.
You're right, yes.
But he's the most wholesome character. You would think James Dean's the bad boy.
Oh, that's interesting. You're right.
But he's actually like, you know, he takes in the kid. The kid's name is Plato, right?
But maybe the idea that it's rebellious to be good.
Yeah.
Maybe that's
it's
the
hip
idea.
To be square.
Yeah, like that kind of thing.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know.
But that's kind of an interesting starting point for most American movie of all time. What do you think it is?
To me, it's Rocky.
Okay.
Yeah.
Explain.
Well, it's just literally the basis of the American spirit and dream.
Yeah.
It's like you can accomplish anything if you work hard enough, if you apply yourself, you put your mind to it. Your destiny is in your hands.
Yeah.
And you can do whatever you are dedicated to doing.
Right.
If you believe in yourself, if you put in the work, that's the basis of America to me. And it's an amazingly well done movie.
I agree.
Yeah.
I think that's interesting. He's also like, there's also the American underdog in that story, right?
Right. In America, do you feel like America is sort of an underdog, or like we have that spirit to us at least?
Yeah. So this is like it's a fascinating contradiction, and I'll get into
You're right, because
that word in a second, because I think contradiction is kind of an interesting word when we talk about America. But I think that the American spirit is definitely the underdog. I mean, that's the whole story of the American Revolution, is that we were the underdog in that.
Yes, and maybe that's why people love underdogs in this country, at least.
I mean, the thing about Rocky is like every single identifying factor of him is an underdog. They're like, we're not just going to make him poor. We're going to make him left-handed. We're not just going to make him poor and left-handed. We're going to make him from like Philly. We're not going to make him poor, left-handed, and from Philly. We're going to make him in love with his brother's, his best friend's sister. Like every single thing, like Stallone was writing that. Like the only thing they didn't do was make him blind or something. You know, like everything about him is such an underdog. And not only that, but at the end of all of this, he's gonna lose.
Yeah.
You know, and that's and the fact that that is the most American movie of all time is so funny to me, because it's like he's the greatest underdog story, and he lost.
Well, he went the distance. That's all that mattered, right?
Right.
Like, I feel, a lot of people probably don't, do you think everyone, when they think of Rocky, I feel like they don't think, oh, Rocky loses at the end of Rocky. I don't think they look at it that way, right?
Well, that's partially because it became a franchise.
Yeah.
And
I think, yeah.
Does he lose again in that franchise? He might lose in the first in the remake, or not the remake, but the
Rocky Balboa.
Yeah.
I can't remember now what happens. He might just go the distance again. I can't remember. I haven't seen Rocky Balboa in a while. I think he wins in 2, 3, and 4. He wins.
Yeah.
5, he's not fighting really.
Right.
It's Tommy or whatever.
Other candidates for this would be Star Wars, the Episode 4, A New Hope, obviously.
Okay.
It's another great underdog story.
You're right, and just the ambition. The ambition of it is very American.
Yeah,
and the fact that he accomplished that for sure. Yeah,
for sure. Sunset Boulevard is a good answer to this.
I don't know if I've seen that.
Oh, okay.
Nico,
our producer started laughing at that. I don't know why.
I told Nico he'd hate this podcast, and I think it just registered with me. Chris was right. I hate this podcast. Let's
do a theory of. We should do an episode of the theory of nothing.
Last time I was in here, Nico was like, "Yeah, I hate those podcasts where there's these pretentious hipsters come in and just rant about art, and then we come in here and that's what we're doing."
That's fine. That's not, you know what? I'm so unconcerned about that because the work we're doing here will last the test of time. They will put this podcast in the Met, where it will stand forever, long after me and you and.
That's true.
Else. Okay, so most American movie of all time. We've come to a couple of conclusions. Rocky, Sunset Boulevard.
So let's do the music or
Rebel Without a Cause. Hold on. Let's see if we can.
More
Star Wars. Anything else?
Movies. Most American movie. I don't know. Rocky.
I think you know what's interesting. I came in here trying to defend Sunset Boulevard as it, but now that we've talked about it, I think it might be Rebel Without a Cause.
Really, more than Rocky.
Yeah.
Why Rebel Without a Cause? Why do you feel that way?
Because I think that his form of rebellion is a very American idea of what rebellion is.
Which is like fighting the good fight or something?
Right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Well, especially at that time.
Right.
At that time in the 50s.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Now it would probably be totally different now, right?
Well, I don't really know. I also this is another. I said this recently to Matthew Schwartz, who works at the Zebra Room, which should be your favorite.
Well,
club.
You guys got some work to do, but you'll get there.
We got work to do because you're not there. That's why we have work to do. I said this statement that was intended to be controversial.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I believe this literally, but I believe it symbolically. I said we were talking about top 5 favorite movies of all time, and I said no movie in the last 50 years should be in your top 5 favorite movies of all time.
Oh, that's silly.
And this pissed him off. But the reason I said it is because I think it takes 50 years for us to really understand a movie.
Oh, I can see that point. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't
But I have a question for you that you're going to hate.
Yeah.
But I'm being serious.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you'll be honest.
Okay.
I don't think you're going to be honest when you answer this question.
Oh, this could be clip worthy. I like where this is going. I like this.
If Rebel Without a Cause was made by Hollywood today.
Yep.
What do you think that would look like, and what would he be? What would he be fighting the good fight, and what would that look like? What would the characters be?
I mean, I think it would be a diverse cast.
Yeah,
for sure. It would not be an all-white cast like it was in the 1950s. Although, actually, I don't know if it was an all-white cast in the 1950s.
I can't remember now.
I don't think it was. I wish I had thought of this earlier because I haven't seen it in years, and I think that here we go. 1955 is when it came out. No, the guy who played Plato, Sal Mineo, is not white.
Yep.
Did you know he was murdered in 1976 when he was 37 years old? I had no idea.
No, I didn't know.
He's from the Bronx. He's Italian.
Okay. I mean, that's pretty white by today's standards.
Yeah, but he looks like I that's what I thought. Like his race is like my level of darkness. Or maybe he's a little lighter than me.
So yeah,
but if Rebel Without the Cause made today, I mean, look, yeah, of course it would be diverse. It might tackle socio-political issues. If it did, by the way, it would be a worse movie.
I'll tell you that I think it would definitely get into race, gender, sexuality. It would get into all that stuff.
Yeah, potentially.
And the good fight that the character's fighting would probably be based around that stuff, because that seems to be what our culture has become obsessed with.
How dare you criticize me for not being honest about this?
Well,
of course I believe you. And of course I agree with you.
Okay, so you do think it would be that?
Yeah.
So what do you think the good fight he's fighting in the original is?
Well, he's fighting on behalf of like friendship. Like he wants to show Plato what being a good friend is. And
see,
stuff like
and
that.
this is why I feel like Hollywood sucks now, because is what we just said. Like, and I might be alone on this, but he's fighting for friendship.
Right.
It's this human experience
Yeah.
that everyone can relate to.
Right.
But if it was made today, I'm positive it would be about this bullshit like political, socio issues, and not this shared human connection that everyone can relate to.
Even though I think actually you and I agree on this, like I don't think this thing bothers me as much because it just means it's going to be irrelevant.
But that's why Hollywood is becoming more irrelevant, because they're not telling stories. And the ironic thing about all this, sorry, I'm getting all amped up now.
Yeah, there we go.
The ironic thing about all this is what brings us together, gay, straight, black, white, whatever, is relating on our shared humanity.
Yeah.
Like we can all relate to friendship in these human experiences. What drives us apart is focusing on these dumb differences, skin color, sexuality.
I 100% agree.
So
I can't believe you thought I wouldn't agree with you.
No, I think you would agree with it.
Yeah.
I just know you don't like talking about this kind of stuff. So.
Well, I just think that it's not the point of this conversation. The point of this conversation is to talk about things that are like bigger than the current political movements or whatever.
So that you've said that a few times on this podcast, but to me it seems inextricable.
Yeah.
Like, how do we talk about Americana without talking about like where we're at socially and politically? Isn't that part of our art and our society?
Because it has to exist beyond that though for it to stay relevant.
But even the great movies of their time, they all dealt with the political and social.
Sure. I mean, that's what I said. All art is political. Of course it is. But but when we talk about politics, we think about politics. It depends on our current interpretation of what politics is, which is and constantly changing.
Someone might watch this and be like, think I'm obsessed with politics. Chris Keene makes everything political, right? But my argument to that would be that our current society, everything is political in our current society.
Yeah.
Like Hollywood is not making movies about friendship. They're making movies about these issues a lot of the time.
Yeah, not all. I mean, I can think of a few examples. Like, I think one you're going to hate. Oh, you want to hear take
Oh, no. Hate. I know what you're going to say, but go on. I have a feeling about what you're going to say, but go
All right,
on.
I want you to predict what I'm going to say.
Are you going to talk about the Barbie movie?
Yes, I am going to talk about the Barbie movie.
Oh, my God. I fucking knew he was going to do that. Oh, my God.
Because the best movie I've seen over the past, I'd say 5 or 6 years, one of the most apolitical films I've ever seen. If anything, one of the more conservative films I've ever seen is the Barbie movie.
I might have seen the Barbie movie twice in theaters.
Yeah, I saw it like 4 times.
Once by myself, once with a lesbian. So I'm a progressive guy.
The Barbie movie is structurally the same as a classic hero's journey.
Mm-hmm.
It's much like Don Quixote or Sullivan's Travels, or it's a classic.
Did those have Ryan Gosling's abs though? Did they?
Well, they had other things, but the thing about a hero's journey that's amazing is that I actually think the catharsis in the film does not happen to the Barbie character. It happens to Gosling's character, Ken.
I was just about to say, who do you think the hero is? Because I think Ken is more
the catharsis of this movie happens to Ryan Gosling's character, not to Margot Robbie's character, Barbie. And the point of that movie actually is that, look, as a society, we can't hate all men or we can't hate all women or whatever, that we have to find ways for you to be enough, or in the movie, Kenough, right? And comfortable in your own identity, regardless of these sort of socio-political demographic factors. And in fact, and this is why I think it's kind of a conservative film, I think that the movie takes into account an appreciation of gender differences and gender distinctness in a way that is not very popular in the current political situation on the left.
I'd have to watch it again. I don't fully remember, but I will say
watch it all the time.
I think
it's a fantastic film.
I think something that you need to understand is that Ben Shapiro disagrees with you.
Well,
okay,
Ben Shapiro's wrong.
I'm just kidding. I wish it was what you just said, because that's.
I mean, it is.
It's not.
It is if you just watch the film. If you want to listen to commentary about the film and have,
I've seen the movie twice.
Opinion, that's fine. That's what that movie is.
I've seen the movie twice. I don't think that is what the takeaway was.
What was your takeaway from that film?
I wish that was the takeaway. You didn't think there was like multiple lectures about how tough it is for women and how men have ruled the world,
sure.
And you didn't hear any of that stuff?
Yeah, of course I did. But I don't think that that's the point of the film.
I didn't get the takeaway of that film was not like we should judge each other as individuals and stop being sexist both ways. That I didn't get that from the movie.
Yeah, I think
that's what you got from the movie?
Well, I got that from the
what
film.
I got from the movie is that women have been oppressed and still are to this day, and men are bad. And there were some hints at that we should actually, no, sorry, I haven't seen the movie in a while, so now I'm remembering it as I'm talking about it. More what the message was to me was not that we should be not judged. It was that men and women don't need each other. That was the vibe. That was the message I got. We don't need each other. Well, that's what I think the messaging kind of was.
I think the idea is that self-worth.
It's fine that men are men and women are women, but we don't need each other. It's we should just let each other be, and it's fine.
I think it's got to be that self-worth comes internally, not externally.
Well, I agree with that,
yeah.
and I of course I agree with that. We need to stop shitting on men or shitting on women. See, my view on all this stuff is that men and women both have their own unique struggles in the world and in our society. There's shit that men have to deal with that women will never have to deal with. And of course, there's a million things women have to deal with that men don't have to deal with.
Yeah.
But this sick ideology that's out there now paints it like it's this, like men have been oppressing women and then the men have no problems and they're just a bunch of
I think
sick
Barbie
people.
is a cultural critique on the current gender ideology. I think Barbie,
but it also reinforces it. So I see it critiques it a little, but it's while reinforcing it though.
But it only reinforces it if you believe that Barbie is the character deserving of catharsis in the film.
Well, I think a lot of people did take that away.
Yeah, that's an unfortunate. I mean, look, I've said this before. Like, most people are bad at watching movies.
Like, a lot of people probably think Ken is the bad guy in that movie, and I don't think he is.
Yeah.
I agree somewhat with what you're saying.
Yeah.
But I did think there was critique of it, but I also think that it reinforced it.
Yeah. I think though that like when I think Barbie to me is very similar to Rocky.
Can I just say one more thing?
Yeah.
Which is what drives me nuts about this is like this narrative of men have oppressed women and all that stuff. Like, and this has been said ad nauseum, but the amount of men that have real power in our country is so small, right? It's like 0.1% of men. Like 99% of men are just struggling to get by every day,
right?
And going to work and doing a lot of the jobs women don't want to do. Like, and yeah, you could make a whole movie about what men have to deal with that women don't,
right.
And you can make a whole movie about shit that women have to deal with that men don't. And it just, I don't know. Sorry, I interrupted you, but
No.
I just hate all this identity politics stuff because it's toxic and it doesn't bring people together. It doesn't create empathy. And I know I interrupted. That you think Barbie is like Rocky? Is that what you just said?
Yeah, but I think in terms of like the hero's journey, and I think in a lot of structural ways, not in terms of the message or the metaphor, but just in terms of the way that I was just very impressed with the Barbie movie on the structure of it.
Okay.
But listen, we should move on from this.
Okay.
And I want to do the other two things, I guess, pretty quickly, because then there's one thing I want to say at the end, too.
Okay. We got like 10 minutes or something.
So, quickly, most American song ever?
To me, most Americans, there's so many. I guess I'll just say ones that come to mind.
Yeah.
Now, this person is somewhat of a disappointment, which breaks my heart because was a hero of mine, which is Bruce Springsteen. I think Born in the USA is one of the most American songs ever written, because and the other one that comes to mind is Fortunate Son by Creedence Clearwater.
Very cool.
Because it's dealing with the reality of being an average person in America. And actually the whole Born in the USA album by Springsteen is, I mean, that Darkness on the Edge of Town too. Springsteen is great at this.
Yeah.
Even though in real life he's whatever. I'm not going to get into it. He charges $400 a ticket, and then he's doing podcasts with Obama, like Obama's the man of a the people. Like, but
so if we're going to choose a Springsteen song, sorry,
it would be Born in the USA, because it deals. But that whole album, really, because it deals with the reality of being an average American and the love you have for your community and your country, but the downsides of it too.
If I'm going to choose a Springsteen song, I would choose Backstreets.
That's a great one.
Because that's a very America, hiding on the back streets.
Yeah.
Very, again, this pastoral, sort of dirt road imagery. Of course, there are a million songs that come to mind from Bob Dylan. Who we've talked about extensively on this podcast. To me, though, I'm saying this again to be controversial. By the way, I don't know if I actually believe this, but I like that I'm.
This better be by an American artist.
Yeah, they're both by American.
Okay.
So, a song you've been obsessed with and that you recently sent me was a song by a band called The Replacements, which I believe they're from Minnesota.
Yes.
Called "I'm Unsatisfied."
It's called Unsatisfied.
Unsatisfied. Yeah. I've listened to it a bunch recently, by the way. Great song. If you've not listened to it. A song I've been really obsessed with recently that I've sent to you is a song called Breakaway by Kelly Clarkson. Came out in 2004. I think that those two songs are the same song and that's the most American song of all time.
Breakaway is the most American song.
No. Breakaway and Unsatisfied, which are the same song, which is the most American song of all time.
That's funny. I'm not kidding. I see the similarities in the themes and the vibe. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously I like the Replacements more, but.
Well, the Replacements and Kelly Clarkson, now that I've kind of studied both of them a little bit more, I think are very similar artists. But I think that the Replacement song Unsatisfied and Breakaway get at this American idea of, as Kelly Clarkson says explicitly, spreading your wings, learn how to fly, do what it takes till I touch the sky. Whereas the Replacement's sort of more biting tone of it is like, look into my eyes and tell me that I'm satisfied. I'm not, Mm-hmm. It's this sort of unsatisfied nature in stagnation, which I think is a very American idea.
Yeah. I mean, it's just such a commentary on life. That's how life is.
Right.
It's just everyone is just constantly unsatisfied. There's a great song by a band called Nada Surf that talks about that.
Okay.
It says, behind every desire, there's another one waiting. Like, like if you fulfill one, they'll just be like, oh, but I don't have this and I don't have this, right? It's human nature.
Okay. Most American piece of literature of all time?
Man, oh God, I don't know. I don't know. That's so hard. There's so many.
I'm going to choose the book I brought.
Okay.
By Walt Whitman here. It's a book of poems called Leaves of Grass. There's a
Maybe Walden, but okay, go on.
Walden's a good answer.
Maybe Walden, because it's very about...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what I like about Leaves of Grass, the opening poem of Leaves of Grass is a poem called Song of Myself. Mm-hmm. It's a very, very long poem. Like, it's like 40, 50
Nico
pages.
said he wants to hear the whole thing.
Yeah. The director's cut of this will be just me reciting this entire poem. But tell me this is not super American here. Where is the beginning of this here?
Oh, dude, there's so many. Now you got me thinking about all the American books.
Tell me this is not very American right here. All right, so the first part of this poem. I celebrate myself and what I assume you shall assume. For every atom belonging to me as good belongs to you. I loaf and invite my soul. I lean and loaf at my ease, observing a spear of summer grass. That's so American.
Yeah, I like that.
There's so much that's American. But to me, the most American stuff comes at the end of this poem because he's talking about it's a very observing poem. Like I see this and I walk by here and I've got all of this stuff that I'm seeing, but I love the grass. It's like I love the cities, but I love the grass. Basically, is this idea. And then he says this. He says, "Look in my face," which is very replacement-y, by the way. Look at my face while I snuff the sidle of evening. Talk honestly, for no one else hears you, and I stay only a minute longer. Do I contradict myself? Very well, then. I contradict myself. I am large. I contain multitudes.
Oh, yeah.
That is America in a sentence.
I can see what... Yeah.
I am large. I contain multitudes.
Yeah. And that actually plays into what I was just thinking, which is like when we talk about the most American book or whatever, there's different aspects to America.
Yeah.
Like what we talk about when we talk about Love is a book by Raymond Carver. It's short stories.
Yeah.
That is a very American book, but it's a very like dark side of America type look at it. But then there's other books that are more, maybe I'm trying to think of what would be the opposite of that, but I can't think off the top of my head what would be the opposite of that. But there's different aspects of, it depends on what we're talking about.
For sure.
So for instance, like Rocky could be the most American movie, but so could Born on the 4th of July.
Right.
Like which aspect of America?
Yeah, it is.
And
large,
maybe does that play into I contain multitudes?
Yeah, I am large, I contain multitude. But even that, do I contradict myself? Very well, then I contradict myself. That sort of fuck you attitude is also very American.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah. Do I fuck you? I contradict myself. That's fine. Yeah. I feel that way about myself too.
Yes, yeah.
Which is okay.
But is that a human thing or an American thing? I don't know.
Fuck you. It's an American thing. How about that?
Okay.
That's what I'll say that about. Then you.
I think it's especially American.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we're gonna overlay the image of this podcast with like an eagle.
Are we gonna do? Is there something else you want to do?
There's one more thing I want to talk about. I want to talk about it for 5 minutes.
Okay.
And then we'll wrap up.
Yeah. Okay.
You okay with this?
Yeah.
But I need to go on my Disney rant.
Oh my god, dude. Oh my god. We're going to do another hour if you do that.
I've got this. I can do this in 5 minutes.
All right. Let's hear it, man.
Okay, so the most American company of all time is Disney. There's not even a close second. Okay? And there's no more important company to the history of America than Disney is. Disney is inflicts, and you might use the term infests, every part of our culture, okay? I love Disney. I am a Disney adult. I grew up going to Disney. My parents had their honeymoon there. It's not my fault. I was raised this way. It's a cult, whatever. I don't care. Fuck you. I am large. I contain multitudes, okay? I have grown concerned about Disney, not necessarily because of the movies they're making or the messaging, but one thing I've grown very concerned about is in the Disney parks themselves. I went to Disneyland this past week with a buddy of mine, and I was really excited about this because even though I live in LA, I don't go there very often. And I was excited because it was a way for me to kind of revisit my childhood, and not only that, but I follow the parks and the updates, and there's new rides and all of that stuff, and I was really excited by this. And I'll be honest, I walked away from the experience. I had a great time there, by the way. I was there from about 7:30 in the morning to midnight. and I rode about 30 rides or so, which was great.
Damn, that's good.
That's my idea of a vacation, by the way. Okay. And I walked away. I had a great time, but I'm a little bit disturbed and somewhat disgusted by what has happened in some of these rides at Disneyland. And
I can't take it. A 30-year-old man is disgusted by what's happened at Disneyland. This is hilarious.
To finish my point.
All right, go on. Sorry.
Here's what's happening. And this isn't talked about on the news enough.
I'll stop. I'm sorry.
I don't know why we're wasting time with Ukraine and some of this stuff here, but this is very important. Because people die all the time, but Disney stands the test of time, okay?
It's true.
So what's happened at the parks is that they've replaced a lot of three-dimensional animatronics of like Snow White and Peter Pan and Mickey and Minnie Mouse. They replaced them with screens.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll be honest, I started tearing up a little bit when I saw these screens. I'm dead serious. I was with a friend of mine, Shane Morgan, friend of the pod, and I had to be consoled about this. The reason why, there are two primary reasons why. The first is that Disney, whenever they've done something, they've made a change to a ride or they've innovated or whatever, they've always made it better. Screens are fundamentally worse than real life three-dimensional animatronics are.
Do kids feel that way, do you think?
So I'm concerned. Well, I'll talk about the children in a second because I'm gravely
This is going to be another half hour of the show.
About the children. No, I'm almost done. Can you not text in the middle of my point?
I'm not. I'm looking something up that pertains to this.
Sorry, I didn't mean to get mad. So the screens thing is a huge issue because not only is that a cheap replacement for real animatronics, and the whole point of Disney is that nothing there should be cheap or feel cheap. The tickets are really expensive. The experience should feel like very genuine and real. But I'm concerned about the children because the children come to a place like Disney to get away from screens, to get away from the iPads and the iPhones and the screens and the technology or whatever. And imagination, I told you this before, imagination is a skill. You've got to learn how to have a good imagination. And we're taking that away from children by shoving screens in their face in these rides. It's really horrifying. And look, I think Disney is important enough of a cultural thing, especially as its relation to children. I do think the government should potentially step in here and create a special commission just for the parks, a federal takeover of the parks, and the person they should put in charge of those parks is me. Because I think that I would replace these screens with real animatronics, okay? I'd bring back Splash Mountain, which is a whole nother conversation, by the way, and an important one to have, by the way.
It's not Splash Mountain anymore?
No. They've replaced it with Tiana's Bayou Adventure, which, look, Princess and Frog was a great movie. But what they've done with that ride is they made it really cheap and it doesn't work, and they've cut a lot of corners.
Is this
with
because
it.
of Song of the South? What?
Yeah, it's because of Song of the South.
Okay.
Which we'll get.
Which pertains to our conversation earlier.
Yeah, I don't know how much time I want to spend. I mean, I could spend a whole hour on why Song of the South might be the most progressive Disney film of all time. It was the first Disney film to feature a black actor in a prominent role. He won an honorary Oscar for it. Now, for whatever reason, people are upset that this movie rewards black actors. To me, that does not sound like – that sounds like a reversion of cultural norms. What were you looking up?
No. I'm listening. I was just looking something up.
Tell me what you were looking up.
All right. I was looking up lyrics to a song.
Oh, gosh.
That, this kind of reminded me of.
Okay.
Well, I have so many things to say about what you said.
Okay.
But
well, let me finish this point.
Yeah.
So why am I so upset about this? I've been unable to think about anything else besides these screens and these rides. And by the way,
I love that you think this is the tragedy of our time. You know,
it is
every day you walk down Hollywood Boulevard, you're stepping over some drug-ridden dead body on the sidewalk, and you're thinking, those goddamn screens at Disneyland. We got to do something about those. Oh, I'm sorry, hobo. I'm sorry I kicked you in the head. Those screens. What do I do about the screens? Oh, is that a needle sticking out of your arm?
Those people come and go.
But culture's forever.
Stays.
Right. The screen
and this is very concerned. I mean, I hope what we look back into in our lives and we sit down in 50 years, we're like, remember that dark age of Disney. I hope that's what we look at.
That's not going to happen. Do you think kids like screens? I have a feeling that kids think the screens are cooler than I think they see the animatronics and they're like, that looks stupid.
But that's not, I mean, we can't have kids be the tastemakers. We tell them what to like.
Yeah. And can we get a drag queen story hour at Disney?
If you could, if it's probably a screen, honestly. If it's a screen, I'm sure Disney would love it. Try to get them to pay for an animatronic of a drag queen. All of a sudden, we've got some issues. We got issues.
There
with
you
this.
go. This could be a bit for you.
So the issue though is that am I being nostalgic about my childhood here? Am I being unnecessarily sort of brash on modern culture and modern society here? Am I being an optimist about the fact that I think this is an opportunity for America to reinvent itself and to change? Here's what I think I'm being, Chris. Are you ready?
I can't wait.
I'm being an American.
Oh shit! Hold on. No applause from Nico. What the hell?
Because I think that the most American thing you can do is look at something and say, this could be better.
Well, that's funny. The screens are allegedly, according to some people, the better version of the animatronics, right?
I've not heard anyone say that.
But I agree with you, but I'm 43 years old. You know, for instance, like practical effects in movies are so much better, in my opinion, than all this CGI bullshit.
I agree.
But CGI and all the screen bullshit, that's the evolution of our art and technology, allegedly.
Allegedly, but this is all, again, a history of fashion. I think that we're going to see practical effects come back.
I wish, dude, but when the iPod came out, that's how old I am. I remember when the iPod came out. Okay. I was like, oh, this is a fad. People aren't going to, this is a shitty version of this. We're not going to do this. And it's just gotten worse.
Okay, but actually, no, you're actually making the opposite point here. Let me explain. What did the iPod replace? The iPod replaced CDs. Mm-hmm. CDs have no sort of cultural, artificial.
They do for me, but.
Well, they have you've got memories associated with them. Uh-huh. But CDs are not vinyl.
Uh-huh.
Vinyl has its own aura and its own aesthetic, and
I would argue tapes do too.
What?
I think tapes and CDs do too, but CDs less so.
Yes, I think CDs significantly less so. There's streaming is a better version of CDs, but it's not a better version of vinyl. Vinyl has its own sound.
That's true. And I enjoy cassette tapes just because it has a vintage feel to it.
Right.
But, yeah.
All right. Well, what are your song lyrics that you were busy looking up? While I was making a brilliant rant.
I listened to everything you said.
About Disney. Brilliant.
I found it hilarious that you're this worked up about Disney.
But everyone should be.
But I also I don't even disagree with what you're saying about Disney. I just think it's funny.
Okay.
Because we have real problems in the world.
That's more real.
No, and I'm being I'm messing with you, but I do agree that is as serious as other things, because when you ruin our culture, that's huge, right? Yeah. That's forever, and that's who we are.
Do you know how many millions of people go to Disney every year? Millions and millions and millions. Every child in the country, what do they all say? I want to go to Disney World. I want to go to Disney World. I want to go to Disneyland. I want to go to Disney World, right?
Yeah.
It is the mecca of the imagination.
No, I agree. Yeah.
And when we take away the imagination from Disney, And you know what else we've taken away from
But
Disney?
it's not taken in a way. It's just in a different format. There's still imagination. It's just the CGI screens. It's not as creative to me as like building something in the animatronics.
Disney's also taken away a lot of learning. This is like a kind of a separate point. Like there used to be a lot of exhibits about U.S. history in Disney and science in Disney, and was the point. Walt loved learning in Disney. There needs to be more education in Disney.
Education's not cool anymore.
No, but
is it?
No, but that's I disagree. I think Disney's version of education.
I loved it when I was a kid.
Yeah.
But now it's
more important.
Is Epcot still there?
Yeah, Epcot's still not in Disneyland. It's always been Disney World, but it's still there. Yeah. But like that's the kind of shit that matters and that's important.
Well, I agree with you. I know I'm teasing you.
It's not algebra. Kids don't need to know algebra. They need to know Disney.
Well, I told you this on the phone, but that's why George Lucas made Yoda talk the way he does.
Right.
Because if Yoda talked just like a normal person and said kind of the messages that he was trying to get through, he thought kids wouldn't listen and it would be boring to them.
Yeah.
So he made it this fun, interesting way of talking so that kids would take it in. So that's kind of what you're talking about, right?
Absolutely.
Of how we... Oh, these lyrics? I don't know. It just reminded me of this Arcade Fire song, The Suburbs.
Okay.
My friend would always tell me this line always made him cry every time.
Yeah.
Where he talks about, I don't know, should I just read the part that made him cry?
Yeah.
There's a line about how it's just a nostalgic song about being when you're a kid and in your house or in your neighborhood. He's like, in my dreams, we're still screaming and running through the yard. And all of the walls that they built in the 70s finally fall. All the houses they built in the 70s finally fall. It meant nothing at all, So that reminds me kind of what you're talking about, which is like these beautiful American things that we built are kind of fading away or they don't mean anything anymore. Or, that's like erasing culture, like getting rid of Splash Mountain, like you were saying, or just getting away from animatronics.
Yeah, I think that the optimistic take on this is that this could be a failed experiment and Disney can go back to real animatronics. They realize their mistake. They will realize their mistake.
Maybe.
They just need people on platforms talking about it, which is what the Theory of Nothing podcast does. Okay.
Yeah,
on that note,
we got to end this.
Let's wrap this up. So the way we wrap up every episode, you've interrupted me 5 episodes in a row.
Interrupt you doing what?
This thing.
Oh, I won't interrupt you this time.
So if I'd like one time doing this the right way. So Chris Keene, what is the Theory of Americana?
I think the Theory of Americana is that it's always changing. That's part of it. And that it's complicated. It's like I contain multitudes, that kind of thing. There's different aspects to it. It's the good and the bad. And that's what I hate a lot about the current dialogue about America, is it only focuses on the bad parts of America. Obviously, there's so much ugly history in America, racism, slavery, oppression. I think every civilization has that, and we focus so much on that, and we don't focus on the other aspects of Americana, which is all these beautiful things we've created, some of which we've talked about here. We used to celebrate those things more, and I wish we would do that. It's good to be aware of our past indiscretions or whatever you want to call them. That's too light of a word, but also to keep in mind why we're the country that we are, why it matters, why we're important. Like I said at the beginning, I think the American federal government does all kinds of evil things, but that doesn't mean I hate my fellow Americans, which is like a lot of people fall into that now with politics, hating the other side. You're just hating your neighbor. It's stupid. But yeah, so Americana, the Theory of Americana to me is it's complicated. It contains multitudes, and there's good and bad. And I think it's important to acknowledge all of it, not just be like jingoistic and love your country blindly, or be this negative person that just focuses on bad things.
I agree with what you just said. I would like to add, though, that I think my opinion on this, and this just might be an agree to disagree thing, but my opinion on this is that America exists beyond politics. and that it doesn't matter what the current sort of iteration of the disagreement between the right and the left is, or the North and the South, or whatever the fuck we're trying to talk about. Because what we have and what we're making here are artifacts that are intended to last beyond the test of time. And when we talk about the stuff that we really admired, that replacement song, and then 20 years later the Kelly Clarkson song, or we've got Whitman writing in the 1800s and Carver writing in the 1900s, or we've got Rebel Without a Cause and your favorite movie of all time, Barbie. What we have there is the idea that this will move forward in the right way. And I think the point of my Disney rant there at the end is I do believe that Disney will move forward in the right way once I am in charge of it.
Well, I look forward to you being in charge of it.
That's right.
And so does Nico.
That's right. Well, folks, that's our podcast here. You can find us on YouTube at the Theory of Nothing podcast. We're also on Spotify, Theory of Nothing podcast. Our Instagram, also the Theory of Nothing podcast. Our email, theoryofnothingpodcast@gmail.com. Please leave us a comment, an email. We're looking for questions constantly for this stuff. Please like and subscribe us on YouTube. We also post reels on our Instagram page. Please like and subscribe those as well. Chris Keene, where can they find you?
At Chris G. Keene on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, wherever YouTube, all that. I'll be doing some touring in the Midwest and in Canada. Come see me do stand-up. You can find the info on my social media.
And you can find me at Brian Wiora on Instagram or at the Zebra Room. We'll be there. That is the comedy club in East Hollywood that I own and perform at often. I'm at the Ice House tomorrow night for the Jester's Court. That's on May 23rd, which I know will be so over by the time you're listening to this, May 23rd, 2025. Most likely you're listening to this on May 23rd of 3025, because that's how long this podcast will last. Chris Keene is actually doing a cold open on that show.
It's going to be huge.
Of mine at the Ice House. You can see me regularly, though, all around Los Angeles. Until next time, anything else, Chris?
I love you.
I love you too.
Okay.
All right, take care.